Hi, everyone. My name is Mandy Ford Argo. I am the director of Tulsa for Venture for America. We are co-hosting this event with Build in Tulsa, which is an amazing organization you're going to hear more about here in a second. We are so glad to be here and to have Tim Butler joining us to talk about grant writing, share his expertise, and then in the spirit of Black History Month, talk more about some of the inequities that we faced in funding for small businesses and founders of color and underrepresented founders. I think there's so much that we're going to learn tonight, and we're so glad to have you here with us. Real quick, Venture for America, if you're not familiar, we're a 2-year fellowship program that's focused on fostering early career talent, entrepreneurial talent. We provide a ton of hands-on professional development and training for our fellows. We have 10 here in Tulsa. We've got a room full tonight doing a watch party in person. We're so glad to have them here. And they're from all over the country. So they chose Tulsa. They chose to come here to start their careers and launch here and learn about the startup world and grow in this growing entrepreneurial ecosystem. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Desiree, who's going to talk a little bit about Build in Tulsa and the amazing work that they're doing and how they're supporting the entrepreneurs and residents like Tim. Desiree?
Thanks, Mandy. Hey, everyone. My name is Desiree Friess, and I'm the Director of Programming with Build in Tulsa. So I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Build in Tulsa is a fairly new initiative. We started about 8 months ago, and our initiative is to eliminate the barriers for Black and Brown founders to launch technology startups in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We know that one way to build generational wealth and hopefully multi-generational wealth is through technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So our mission is to help scale Black and Brown founders and provide them with the resources, training, mentorship, and access to other forms of intellectual, social, and financial capital to build their businesses. Right now, we partner with 3 accelerators in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Act Tulsa, Lightship Capital, and newly added to our list is Techstars. And we produce other programs to help founders such as Build Up. Build Up is a workshop series that's a free training bootcamp for 8 weeks that helps founders go from an idea to hopefully a prototype at the end of the 8 weeks. We have a female founders pitch night, which is actually this Thursday in Tulsa, shameless plug, at 36 Degrees North from 6 to 9. And we have 7 amazing female-led tech entrepreneurs who will be pitching for $2,500 or $1,000 second prize. And we do a host. Sorry, I'm outside. I have to get some fresh air. We do produce a host of other programs, opportunities, and events for the ecosystem here in Tulsa. So one of our programs is an entrepreneur residence, and Tim Butler has been one of our most amazing EARs, along with Haley Mortimer, who you'll hear from soon. And they are in a program where we provided them free desk space for 6 months in order to focus on other areas of their operations as they look to scale and grow here in Tulsa. And so we are actually, last shameless plug, is we also have applications open for our second cohort of the Entrepreneur in Residence program. It is on our Instagram. We are Build in Tulsa on Instagram, and it's also on our Facebook, also Build in Tulsa. And the applications close this Friday, March 4th, and you get 6 months of free desk space, opportunities for mentorship and coaching, and access to really awesome events, actually like the one you're on today. So thank you, Mandy. And thank you, Tim, and thank you, Haley.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Desiree. So I'm so pumped to announce and introduce Tim Butler as our speaker for this evening. He has such great extensive knowledge in grant writing, the history of grant writing, best practices for grant writing in terms of both for-profit and not-for-profit sectors. We honestly could not find a better guest speaker to join us and talk about this practice, and we're really, really excited to learn from him, as well as the history, again, of the inequities that have faced founders and entrepreneurs of color in small businesses. So Tim, I am really excited to pass it on to you and talk more about an overview of what you're going to talk about tonight and the amazing Amazon gift card giveaway that you're taking on.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up, please. You can use it Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate you guys coming out. For those who may not know who I am, my name is Tim Butler. I am the founder and owner of Freelance Professional Services, Tulsa's premier grant writing and fundraising consulting firm. I, along with my good friend here, Haley Mortimer, we are entrepreneurs in residence at Build In Tulsa, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanking Mandy, the entire Tulsa VFA team, Desiree, and the entire executive team for Build In Tulsa, just for this wonderful opportunity for us all to come together and for me to be able to share the knowledge that I have about grant writing, fundraising, and also some of the historical disparities that Black and Brown founders face for educational purposes tonight. The first thing I want to say is, do you guys think I look like Fab from Milli Vanilli? Talk about it, because I'm serious. Like, I worked on this hair trying to get this thing right, and I'm trying to, just see what you guys think. Do y'all don't think I look like Fab? It's like, no. Thank you, KK. She says, no, but your hair is fabulous. Now, that is my special. Howard University is in the house tonight. So awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm really glad. I see so many beautiful and familiar faces. I see some friends and clients from all over. I have my one of my clients here, Charles Tuo. I see Chris Porter. My goodness, Stephanie, thank you so much, Stephanie Hacking, for coming. Michelle Oral Roberts University is also in the house. Thank you so much. Pastor Chanel Stewart, thank you so much, from North Carolina. Christine, all the way in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much. Yvonne as well. I see so many wonderful faces. Thank you guys so much for coming. So many wonderful people. Before we get started, I know that we were talking. Awesome. Thank you, Tiffany. I see you there. Thank you so much. We were just, Mandy was asking for you guys to put in the chat some of the things that you wanted to get out of tonight. I know that we've had several folks since she said that to come on. So I'm asking you guys to just take a moment to go ahead and put in the chat, what is one thing you most urgently want to learn tonight? What is that one thing that you want to learn tonight? I want to make sure I give you that opportunity so that you guys can tell me what you came for, so that as we talk tonight, I'll make sure that I hit all of those points for you. So I'm looking at the chat just to see what you guys are typing. Just wanted to see what. Okay, so Kaylee says how to build relationships with funders. That's a really good thing. We will definitely touch on that as well. What is a grant beyond money? Awesome. That's a good question. Okay. Where to look? Okay, I see that. Awesome. All right. Anybody else have it come? Okay. Is there funding for nonprofits? Okay, we will definitely talk about that. Creating systems and processes for grant management. Recognizing and using grant language. Yes, where to look. Grant writing for funding minority small for-profit businesses, technology grants, do's and don'ts of grant writing. What are typical grant conditions? Interesting. Wow. These are very, very, very good questions. And I know I won't be able to get to all of them, but I will do my best to try to touch on as many of them as I possibly can. Awesome. Hi, Tulsa VFA fellows. You guys look awesome tonight. Thank you for joining us. Awesome, awesome. Gwen says, learn more about the process and the best way to approach and start. Okay, so I want to preface by saying we only have about an hour and a half roughly together tonight, but I may not be able to answer every question, but I will get to as many of those as I possibly can. What I'm going to do is we are hosting, Build in Tulsa has so generously sponsored this. We are hosting a $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. It is a part of my company's rebranding strategy. We are doing a survey. that was created by my fellow cohort member, Haley Mortimer, who's going to come on here briefly and just give you some details about that. But we are doing a drawing. What's going to happen is we're going to get the survey live and going, and then we're going to send it to you guys as emails, so that you guys can go ahead and take that survey, and there will be a drawing for it. Haley's going to come on briefly to introduce herself, tell you a little bit more about her company, and then she's going to tell you a little bit more about the details for the survey. Haley, come on up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Tim, for the introduction. So honored to be presenting and kind of jump in and say hello. As Tim mentioned, I've had the pleasure of working with him to help with his rebranding for his company and help moving efforts towards using data from attendees like you guys and people who are interested in the grant writing process to learn as much as possible as we can from you individuals, so that Tim and his company can provide you guys with the best resources possible. With that, we've developed a survey that we'll be launching shortly to you guys via email, which will be asking you a little bit of the questions about what are you guys looking for in terms of grant writing services, a little bit about yourself, and we'll be taking that data and helping Tim and his company rebrand into something beautiful. And so keep an eye out for your emails. It's a very short survey. If you have any questions, feel free to respond to that email directly. And as Tim mentioned, once the survey is launched, we'll send details on how you can be eligible to win that Amazon gift card.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Haley, for that. All right, is everybody ready to get started? Give me a thumbs up. I'm a very interactive presenter. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I don't want to delay. I want to just jump right in. All right, so I am going to share my screen, and let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we? Can everyone see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. Awesome. All right, so a couple of things. The first thing I want to say is, before I dive into the presentation, I used to be a high school teacher, believe it or not. And so I am the type of presenter that I am very interactive. I don't want to go through these slides without making sure that you guys understand the material and that your questions are being answered. One of the things is that we're going to take a couple of spaces throughout the duration of this presentation to pause and take questions. You can come on camera and state your question live. I love that interaction. I encourage that interaction. We want you to do that as much as you possibly can. But B, if you don't feel comfortable speaking in front of everyone or asking your question, you can feel free to put that in the chat. Our hosts are going to be monitoring that, and we will try to get to as many of those questions as we possibly can, answering those questions. The way this is going to flow, class, part one of this is we're going to take a historical snapshot, if you will, as reference to how did we get to this current place that we are in with economic inequality as it relates to entrepreneurship and wealth creation. From there, we'll take questions, and then we'll go on to part two, where we're going to start our Grant Writing 101 workshop. And that is where I will answer those specific questions that you all have as it relates to grant writing. All right. Until then, I ask that you hold your questions until that time comes. You will see on the screen where I'm going to prompt you to go ahead and ask your questions. And then also, I'm asking just to be sure that anybody that has recently come on, please go ahead and put yourself on mute while I am speaking. That way we won't have any feedback or audio interruptions. All right. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. As you guys already see, we have Venture for America here on the screen. I know that Mandy didn't say this, but they are a wonderful organization with their 2-year fellowship. And so this was a great idea of the team to come together like this. And they are also fundraising for different initiatives that they have. So they are a wonderful organization to give to. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you're looking for a place to sow a seed or contribute, they are definitely a worthwhile organization. Here we have Build in Tulsa. As Desiree introduced, Build in Tulsa is a tech-forward entrepreneurial ecosystem. They are catalyzing multi-generational Black wealth, all while supporting historically underrepresented entrepreneurs. Black women, as statistically speaking, Black women right now are one of they're trailblazing. Out of the minority groups, they're one of the fastest growing segments of entrepreneurs in America. They have the female pitch founder event this Thursday, I believe it is, Thursday or Friday. And so that is something that they're investing in. They've invested in me. They've invested in Haley as a woman entrepreneur. They've invested in several others. They are a wonderful organization here in Tulsa to support as well. So www.buildintulsa.com is where you can find more information about them. All right, here is my friend Haley. Her company is called Sage Outcomes. And she mentioned that she is the founder and CEO and also an EIR with me at Build in Tulsa. You look great in this photo, by the way. They really got you in the great lighting and all of that. So you look gorgeous. And so with Haley having designed the survey, you all are going to see that. This is something that she specializes in, helping startups, companies that have been around for a while with their branding as it relates to market research. One of the things that Desiree emphasizes to our entire team at Build in Tulsa is the numbers don't lie. They tell a story. So in other words, when you're making a business decision, whether you are a for-profit or a nonprofit, you're going to need to gather data. You can't just pull numbers out of the wind. You can't just go based off of assumptions or presumptions. You need to see what the market data actually says. Haley is an expert when it comes down to helping you to figure these things out for your business or for your cause. Hence why I am working with her throughout my rebrand. So that is something I wanted to share with you guys. If you are interested in following up and learning more about her services, you can go to www.sageoutcomes.com. All right, that's Haley. And again, we are giving away 2 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, Build in Tulsa has so graciously sponsored us for one of those cards, and I'm going to provide the other one as well. And so once you get that survey in your email, be sure that you fill it out in its entirety so that we can enter you into that competition so that you can be, you could possibly win $100 in addition to the wonderful information you're going to get tonight. All right. So we're going to dive right in here. Founder readiness, grant writing 101. Now, of course, for those who have been in college, I know that I see some of my classmates here, Action Jackson in Houston, with the wonderful work that they're doing down there. So thank you for coming. Many of us have been to college, and we know that most of the time when we have a college course and it's an introductory level course, they normally coded the numerals 101. All right. So here, I'm not going to assume that everyone is on the same page. As a matter of fact, I'd go out on a limb and say, I know that everyone's not on the same page. There are several people here who don't have a clue about grant writing. And then there are some folks who are further along. What we're going to do is we're going to try to shoot right down in the middle to give everybody something so that everyone can leave with some gold nuggets. There are no stupid questions. There are no dumb questions. And I'm a little country boy from Mississippi. And my mother used to tell me when I was growing up, child, a closed mouth don't get fed. So you have to open up your mouth and state what you need. I'm here to serve you guys. I'm here to answer those questions. So know that this is a safe space for you guys to communicate those questions. All right, there's that guy there. My company, again, is called Freelance Soul Professional Services. That is an old number, but yes, I have raised well over $1 million secured for startups, nonprofits, and social entrepreneurs. I want to emphasize, I work with both for-profits as well as nonprofits. That is a very unique thing. You don't tend to find fundraising consulting firms that do that. Most of them will work with only nonprofits or only for-profits, but to go across lines is very rare. Beyond that, obviously I'm Black male. Well, in our industry, it is a predominantly female dominated industry. And beyond that, to see Black men taking a lead for a grant writing or fundraising consulting firm, that's very, 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 very rare. So I just want to emphasize that you're not going to see many people that look like me and that are male that are going to be doing this for a living. We do exist, but they're not a lot of us that are out there. So what you're getting from me is going to be a very unique and customized experience. These are some of the clients that I have worked with in the past successfully. I have way more than what I'm able to show here, but the pole politicking show, Chris Porter is actually here in attendance. He's out in San Diego, California, in that area with his Hip Hop History Museum and the wonderful work that they are doing out there on the pole politicking show. If you are a lover of hip hop, Chris is a great asset for that, and he would definitely be someone to work with. Soaring Eagles Youth and Family Services here in Tulsa, 36 degrees north. Devin Laney, our president and executive director, the Tulsa Dream Center, Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, and several others that I've worked with as well. I'm also a certified nonprofit professional. So I'm not just stating what I've done as far as fundraising. I've been trained to do it. My initial training came through this organization. Here's my alma mater. I'm undergraduate. I went to Howard University, one of the nation's largest historically Black colleges and universities. It is also the same HBCU that Vice President Kamala Harris also graduated from as well. So great big old shout out to HU. And I put this on here because as we're talking about grant writing and the historic disparities, economic inequalities. Howard University is where I cut my teeth initially in getting trained in grant writing, but from a lens of social equity and social responsibility. And so I had great teachers. Honestly, I just enjoyed those years and they were just awesome to me. And this is where I'm coming from. So I'm sharing these things so that you guys will see that. Here's my LinkedIn. I'm also going to put that later on in the chat as well. I'm encouraging each of you guys to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my work. So in case you're wondering, how do I contact him? This is where you're going to find me. The purpose of this presentation, sorry, let me go back here. The purpose of this presentation, again, is to explore the historical inequities that have contributed to the economic injustices that we have in entrepreneurship. It's also to teach you a basic introduction to fundraising through grant writing. This is not going to give you, this presentation tonight is not going to give you a lot of detail as it relates to the specifics of how to draft your grant proposals. I know that some are interested in federal grant writing, some are interested more in maybe smaller grants. I'm going to touch on some of those things to give you some tips and some gold nuggets to take home with you, but it's not going to be, we don't have enough time for me to go through an entire grant application and walk you through step by step. I encourage you to, when I offer these, to take my grant writing workshops. I do have a boot camp that I would love for you guys to take, and it is pretty intense. We have a lot of different folks that are represented all over the nation, all over the world here, and everybody's coming for something different. Some things that I want to emphasize to you that you will learn tonight. You're going to learn grant writing for career skills. For example, many of the Tulsa VFA fellows are fresh out of college. Many of them are just now getting their first jobs and going through that program to help them to navigate their career training. This is going to give you an added skill for that, especially when it comes down for fundraising and so forth. That is an extra skill you will be able to add to your resume. Also, building awareness of grant writing for businesses and nonprofits. Maybe you are past the college stage here and you just want to learn how to grant write from the very beginning for both your business or your nonprofit. Maybe you don't know how to do it. Maybe you're just trying to educate yourself. All of that's perfectly fine. It's going to be something here for everyone. And then the DEI training for career advancement, and then also personal and professional growth. I could not do this presentation without giving my mentor a shout out. Dr. Beverly Browning She is the Black queen of grant writing. She is a guru. Dr. Browning wrote the bestseller in the 90s, Grant Writing for Dummies. Like I said, this is like the Bible when it comes down to grant writing. She caught a lot of flack because she gave a lot of our industry secrets out, teaching these things, but she truly gives you an insider's point of view and perspective as for someone who is a layman or laywoman who doesn't come from the grant writing world, and you're wanting to learn how to write grants. This is a great academic resource that will help you. Grant Writing for Dummies. Dr. Browning has been in the business, the grant writing industry for about 46 years now. She is an approved federal grants trainer and administrator. She's trained magistrates across the nations. She's very good at what she does, and I am one of her proteges. Another one of my mentors that I want to mention is Rodney Walker, founder of Grant Central USA. When it comes down to grant writing systems and the business side of things, because many of you did mention that you were looking for systems, Rodney Walker is a person that you want to follow. He has a free YouTube channel. If you look for his name, Rodney Walker, he gives great insider tips as well. He walks you through his experience. I gravitated towards him, and I've learned so much from him. So I just wanted to mention that name to you guys as well. Here's a couple of other resources I want to give those who may need them. These are books that I had as a student at Howard University. I still have these books on my desk at my office at Build In Tulsa. The How-To Grants Manual gives you an insider perspective on grant writing, and then also knowledge and skill development in nonprofit organizations. The skills that these books will teach you will go for both the nonprofit sector and the for-profit arenas. I also would definitely not be able to do what I do without God, and also without this wonderful woman of God that my wife, Brandy, here, as well as my daughters. I live in a household full of women, and in the Butler household, the ladies dominate. And so this is just my shameless plug of my tribe here. So I'm a happy man. I'm really blessed. And so again, I wouldn't be able to do what I do even now with her keeping the girls downstairs and being able to reach out to you guys. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with this shadows from the past. Shadows from the past. All right, sorry, let me go back here. There are many roads to Dublin. All right, so when that was a song, maybe you haven't heard about it, but that was a song that was made famous by an Irish traditional band called the Chieftains. I think it was like 1962. So the song is called Rocky Road to Dublin. And so there's a saying that says, you know, there's more than one way to go about getting to Dublin, Ireland. You can take the rocky road, you can take the back roads, you can take the highway, you can take some of those major freeways as well. But there's more than one way to get there. It's like the old adage, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Not that I'm an animal hater or anything like that. I don't want Frisky meowing at me, but there is more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to get to Dublin. So Tim, why in the world are we talking about Ireland? Why are we talking about Dublin in this context? Because just like that, there's also multiple pathways to build wealth in America. Now, many economists and even investors will argue and say, you know, some folks will say, for example, the way to build wealth is to save your money for a rainy day. Some folks will say, no, it isn't. The way that you build wealth is you want to go ahead and own real estate and own your home and create wealth that way. There's different arguments on both sides of the conversation, but in general, most people, most economists will agree the most direct ways for you to build wealth in America are in these three areas: real estate, investing, and entrepreneurship. Okay? Real estate, investing, and entrepreneurship. Well, let's talk about those things. All right, here is a chart of the white and Black wealth gap. All right, let's take a look at it here. What you will see in this chart, and I'm gonna have to move a few things around, is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. In this chart, the summation of it shows that in 2016, the typical white family had about 10 times the wealth of the typical Black family. If you look at I believe that is orange. If you look at that, that is going to be your line of the 50th percentile of wealth for Black families. So that's at the 50th percentile, it's still significantly lower than the 50th percentile for white families, which is at the top line in blue, significantly lower. That's a great divide. In purple, you see the 75th percentile of wealth among Black families. So it gets higher, but it's still not quite as high as the 50th percentile for white families. And then if you notice, there's no indication here for the top earners in America, the top 10 to 20%. They're completely off the chart. So what are some things that we can extrapolate from this graph here? We know that there's definitely a huge divide as it relates to the wealth gap between Blacks and whites in America. We know that even beyond that, again, there's 10 times the space. Even beyond that, the top earners are so far beyond where everyone else is, they're completely off the charts. So how did this come to be? What happened that created this? I mean, okay, I know that though we're not trying to echo any of these sentiments, there are some stereotypes that may think that, well, hey, why are Blacks not earning more money? Is it because they're just filled with consumerism, you know, that they're just spending all of their money, they're not saving? Is that really true? Or are there some other things that are going on as a result of this? Here are some statistics from, let me go back, make sure. All right, there we go. Here's some statistics. Millionaire Statistics, this is from Spend Me Not. It says the United States added over 2 million new millionaires from 2019 to 2020. That's a lot of new millionaires. So these are not folks that they've inherited the money. This was people who are either self-made primarily, or folks who, you know, that they basically have created this wealth for themselves. The total number of millionaires in the US at that time was 20.27 million. And then there are 788 billionaires in the US. I also point out there are over 300,000 millionaires just in New Jersey alone. So for you guys that are over in the New York, New Jersey area, you guys are really killing it. 76% of US millionaires are white. That's over 3/4 of the group. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for other people, okay? That's an interesting statistic to look at. But why is that? Okay, here's some of the things that we're gonna talk about. This is an African proverb called Sankofa. I learned this at Howard University. It's translated loosely, go back and get it. So think about this. If you were to explain yourself, meaning who you are as a person, what thoughts you comprise, what you believe, are you able to express who you are right now in the current present without the inclusion of your parents? Is it possible? I don't think so, because number one, you didn't get here by yourself. If your parents didn't feed you, you wouldn't have survived to make it to adulthood. If your parents didn't change your dirty diapers, that could have caused other issues as well. Somebody had to take up the responsibility of taking care of you, teaching you right from wrong, teaching you all of these different things, so that ultimately you could become this conglomeration of life experiences that you are today. There's no way that you could get to where you are today if you weren't standing on somebody's shoulders. At the same token, we could even say that you couldn't be who you are today without your grandparents, because they had to create your parents, who in turn created you, if you will, or your great-grandparents. The idea is there are some folks who want to separate and say, we are in the present and we are doing everything that we are, and we are who we are because of where we are in the present by ourselves. And no one had anything to do with that. And what I beg to differ is that you could not be here without somebody helping you from the past. All right. So with that being said, if you look at this Sankofa, this mythical bird in the circle, the black circle here, it is looking back. Instead of looking forward, is looking back, trying to get this this egg, this item here, because it's trying to learn from the past so that we can inform the future. So what has happened in the past that has created us or got us to be where we are today? Present conditions are a result of either past victories or past failures. You cannot separate the influence of the past from the present. They're inextricable. They are uniquely different, but they both, one is built on the other. I want to play a brief video for you guys. Now, I know that if any of you are like me, when I was in high school, you're like, oh my gosh, a video, but this is a pretty cool video. Doesn't take too terribly long. We got some time here. I want to play this for you because it's going to give you some insight into some of the things I've mentioned, and then we're going to talk about it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And let's watch.
Hey, Tim, we can't hear the sound. Is there a way to play the audio through the presentation?
Okay, sorry guys, I didn't recognize that you couldn't hear that. Okay, hang on just a moment. Yes, you guys, okay, so you guys can't hear that?
No, I think you have to play it through a speaker in order for us to be able to hear it.
Let's try one other thing, and if this doesn't work, then I'll pivot, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna stop my screen share just for a second here. Bear with me just a moment. Technology, right? We're gonna try this. All right, can everybody see my screen now? Give me a thumbs up.
Sure can.
Okay, I'm gonna try this and see if this works.
No sound.
Still no Tim. So I think if you go to share screen and click the up arrow and advanced sharing options, there's
Computer audio?
yes, computer audio.
All right, let's try this one last time. Sorry about that.
Got it.
You can hear it.
Awesome.
Just over 150 years ago, this
But we
was
can't see
money
your screen.
for almost
Yeah,
half
now
of
we can't
America.
see your screen playing along with the sound.
On multiple bills were people.
Wow. Okay. Let me try one last thing, and if this doesn't work, we're going to go ahead and move on. I'll summarize the video for you guys, and we'll get to the first set of questions. My goodness. All righty. Okay, so we're going to try this. See if it works. Do you guys see
On
my
multiple
screen now?
bills were people picking cotton,
No,
enslaved people.
Okay,
just the sound.
just the sound. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know what is going on, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pivot from that. Technology interrupts and it happens, but we come prepared. And so I'm prepared to talk about those things. So essentially, class, that video was going to talk about some of the histories of the economic disparities, issues with surrounding economic injustices. Okay, those are some of the challenges that have led us to be where we are today. I feel that I'm going to say some things, but then Desiree, if you also have some things that you would like to add to this, please feel free to chime in as well, because I know that we have a manifesto with a one-page document that talks specifically about our thesis at Build In Tulsa. Essentially, we are where we are today, class, as a result of what has happened in the past. The economic inequalities that have happened in America are a result of long-standing systemic discrimination. We're still feeling those effects to this very day. Black and brown people in this country, there's several studies that I can reference. I don't have the data to pull in front of you right now, but there are several studies that have been done that have been secret shopper type studies. Even the Biden-Harris administration has quoted these things, where Blacks have gone in an attempt to create wealth, whether it be purchasing homes, whether it be getting loans for starting a business, and other areas, and they have been discriminated against even to the present day. We know that those things have happened in the past, but then those things have continued to transpire even to this very day. That video was going to summarize those things, and it was going to talk about, yes, it does. It was going to summarize those things and talk about that as well. I felt that it was easier to present it in a video versus me just sitting up spouting out a bunch of statistics, because the visuals were really good and it's Netflix. So it grabs your attention and it shows it for you. So that's why I wanted to share that. Desiree, do you have anything you would like to add in regards to some of those statistics and some of the things that we have in our thesis at Build In Tulsa?
Yeah, so I mean, just to piggyback on that, just what we're doing is eliminating those barriers. You know, it's one of the things Tim pointed out is about our focus also on women. We have Haley and our entrepreneur residence program, and then we also have our female founders pitch night. Is that Black women especially, are disadvantaged as it comes to starting a technology innovation company, or even just starting a business. And so what we're just trying to do is just eliminate the barriers. And you eliminate the barriers just by providing, as you said in the beginning, you have to know thy customer. Once you know your customer, you can understand their needs, you can build a better program and build in better resources to meet their needs. And so especially the specifics of a grant. A grant has an audience, has an impact statement, and the impact statement for us, or at least the impact that we oversee, is that once we start getting more and more Black and brown folks into these positions where they're getting training and resources and other opportunities to build or launch or sustain their companies, is that we hope that we see more and more and more, they're teaching each other, providing the resources, and then we start to see those barriers and those numbers decrease over time. So it's what we're doing here in Tulsa, is what we're trying to create is that blueprint so that that could be replicated as a model across America, so that we continuously eliminate barriers everywhere.
Awesome, awesome. I'm going to reshare my screen, and I'm going to take up where we left off. And we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. We're going to open the floor up to questions. Yes, for those who don't know this, I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s. This is an old band, R&B group called Jodeci, one of my faves. And they had a song, Come and Talk to Me. So this is just a plug in to just shout out to those earlier age millennials like myself who love R&B. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start here, guys. If you have any questions, You can either come on screen and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat. Any questions about historic inequities at this point? Don't all speak all at once.
I have one for you.
Yes, Monica.
So from what you're showing us so far, are you basically saying that with the inequities that do exist, that it ties in with grants? I mean, to help, like, I heard you say that you do for-profits as well. Are you saying that it ties in with grants? And how do you find that there's a lot of grants out there for profit businesses? Because I always tend to think that it relates to nonprofit.
These inequities permeate both spheres, the for-profit and the nonprofit sectors. So when it comes down to how this ties directly into grants, right now, for example, corporate America has earmarked well over $50 billion to commit towards both for-profits and nonprofits in leveling the field. That was not an exaggeration. I said over $50 billion, and you are able to tap into that. But here's the kicker. That commitment did not come until two things happened. Number one, we were in a pandemic and they had to pivot themselves, just like we just had to pivot with the video. Unfortunately, the other part was we had the George Floyd murder. I'm going to summarize it in this way and try to be as sensitive about this topic, because this is not an easy conversation to have. There were people who didn't get it, who finally got it. But unfortunately, it took what was the equivalent of a public lynching to happen in front of America for them to get it. So it has resulted in some attempts and initiatives to level the playing field, but we have a lot of work to do and we have a very long way to go. Does that answer your question, Monica?
Yes.
All right, that was a really good question. Thank you. Anyone else have any? I see someone put a question in the chat. Could you talk about how one could use data in different ways? I don't know if that was for data for grants, types of organizations. Okay, that's going to be covered here in the next sector or section rather. Is there something that minority business owners can take from the history to be able to utilize or tap into this wealth presently? Yes, there's some things that minority businesses can do. Number one, you can, from taking from this, you can, if you will, I hate the term, I'm going to say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but that's not what I mean by this when I'm getting ready to say that. What I mean is take the initiative. You need to take the initiative to be active, proactive, and search for these grants. We're going to talk more about how to go about doing this in the next section of this presentation, but being proactive with searching for these grants, knowing that these programs are out here, that there have been corporate commitments to both for-profits and nonprofits. There are governmental agencies that are giving out grants for both, mostly for nonprofits, but there are some that have been earmarked for for-profits. Quite a few of these programs have been earmarked for minorities as well. We just don't sometimes know that these programs exist. And then sometimes we don't have all of our data or our ducks in a row to be able to access the programs. For example, I recently looked at the SBA microloan program. It's for about up to 50K ask. And so you can get up to $50,000 in this particular loan, but they do ask for pro forma financials. And several minority business owners struggle when it comes down to putting together the data, compiling financial projections,
I cannot believe I
being
just
able
did
to
this right
do
now.
that, so forth and so on. Make sure everyone stays on mute, please, so that we don't have any interruptions, so that I can answer those questions. We want to make sure that everybody can hear. But those are some of those reasons as to how we got here. And these are some takeaways for minority businesses. I'll take one more question and then we'll move on to the next section. Someone asked, I'm sorry, was it?
We've got
Can you mute?
Oh, we've got a question.
Yo, okay. So my question is, okay, cool. Yeah. So my question is this. Are there any way you showed those statistics on the wealth gap between basically the 50 percentile of white families and Black families? Are there any things that I can get that specifically talk about Afro-Latinos? Because I grew up in a part of the country where there's a lot of Afro-Latinos, a lot of Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Colombians, etc. And the reason I'm asking this question is because it's kind of like a bisectionality thing. So my cousin was trying to get like a loan to start a business, small business loan. He puts down in his application Brandon Perez. So he walks into the thing, the person already is expecting one thing. When my cousin walks in Black and Puerto Rican, he gets put in a whole completely separate box. So my question is there any like statistics or data that I can get on specifically like Afro-Latinos and the wealth gap and basically investment gaps in between them and white families? Specifically Afro-Latinos and not just Hispanics, because that's one thing that gets lost on a lot of statistics is that they just group Latinos as a whole when there's a separation there within the Hispanic community. If you live in that community, you know that there's a difference.
Absolutely. I am familiar with, there's some, can you mute yours? I was about to say, thank you so much. There was an echo. I am familiar with a lot of those disparities there. And so what I would suggest to you, the first thing is, I can't say expressly that there is or isn't data specifically on Afro-Latinos, just because I personally have not had to look for it, but I'm pretty sure that there is some data out there. You would want to do Boolean searches to be able to find that information. In order to get that, you can use Google, for example, as a free resource. You probably would type in a search query like Afro-Latinos plus wealth gap. You can do another search string, Afro-Latinos racial inequities. There's several different combinations that you can use to find. We use these types of search strings all the time when we're looking for data, because whenever you're writing a grant, and I will talk more about this in the next section of the presentation, you can't just make bold statements. You have to have statistical data, measurements to back it up. Whatever you're going to say, you have to be able to prove it. You have to show impact, because the way the funders are looking at you is, this is an investment they're trying to make. They want to make sure that you have a solid plan of action to carry out what you're trying to do, what you're asking them to invest in. They want to make sure that you know your stuff and that you have a plan that's going to work. I would encourage you to do those types of searches, and you will be able to find more information as it relates to that. All right. I think that's about all the questions we can take on that. What we're going to do now is I'm going to share my screen one more time. There is no more sound left. And we're going to get right into the Grant Writing 101 workshop here, okay? Can everybody see my screen? Give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Part 2, Grant Making 101. All right, so I'm going to give you guys some of my own personal definitions as it relates to the grant world. The first thing is maybe you've never heard of what it even is a grant. Some people have some loose ideas, but just to kind of bring it all together, a grant is free money or resources that is given away to support a worthy cause. I put the words free money in quotations because the FCC does not like the term free money being used in advertising. Just as a plug there, they associate it a lot of times with business scams. So I put that quotation there just so that you guys could recognize the concept that it is free money, is money that does not have to be paid back. But I just wanted to emphasize that it is indeed free money. All right, philanthropy is the overall process of organized charitable giving. So basically the whole world of being able to, of giving, seeking funders and that sort of thing. And a philanthropist is the person, the company, or entity that gives away grants, AKA the funder. All right. There are two general categories of free money or grants: public and private. And then there's two types. We're going to talk about the categories first. Public funding is money that's from the government. More oftentimes, this is what you call discretionary grants. These are competitive grants out on the market. How that process looks is the federal government will issue what's called an RFP, which stands for Request for Proposals. They do it continuously throughout the year. Different government agencies have the task of giving out different federal grants for specific things. For example, when the pandemic hit, there was a whole slew of federal grants that were released to help support initiatives surrounding health, vaccinations, the support, economic support in the pandemic. And again, a lot of it is for nonprofits, but there are several that are still for profits. The other thing is that for-profits can benefit from this, even if they are not nonprofits, because nonprofits, one of the things that they have to do is form partnerships, strategic partnerships. For-profits can strategically partner with nonprofits to be able to participate in some of this through other fiscal sponsorship as well. So public funding, grants that are from the government. Private funding or private grants is money that does not come from the government. These are going to come from private foundations like individual donors, corporations, celebrities, maybe community groups, so forth and so on. But that is going to be the biggest difference between those. One is government funded, the other one is not. All right. There are two types, general types of grants. Not categories, but generally two types here when it comes down to grants: cash versus in kind. Cash is exactly what it says, the money, the mean green dollars, that value. And then in kind support is non-cash assistance. These could be tools, computers, software supplies. It could even be expert assistance, their time. Whatever, if it's something that is not cash, but it has a dollar value to it, it would be classified as in-kind support. Those are going to be your two general categories and your two general types. Here is a good starter list for popular types of grants. So there's a lot of college students or those that have just come out of college. So scholarships, those are forms of grants. They tend to be a little bit smaller, but depending on how large the grant competition is, the scholarship competition is, but there are scholarships that are out there. Pell Grants, SEOG and work study, these are all need-based grants that are used as an alternative to traditional student loans, particularly through the government. Program and project grants, these are very, very common. These are the types of grants that are out there to support work in the community. This has been historically allocated mostly towards traditional nonprofits. Again, but businesses can still strategically partner with nonprofits to participate and sometimes get access to this funding. General operating grants, these cover your operational expenses. These are more so unrestricted types of grants. And when we say unrestricted, and that means that rather than using it for a specific purpose, it can be used for whatever purpose you feel that it needs to benefit your organization within certain parameters. Capital grants, have you ever heard the term capital campaign? This is money for building construction, maintenance, renovation, building. These are building projects. You got to have money to be able to build these projects. For example, if I was a capital campaign clerk for a faith-based homeless shelter in North Central Texas many years ago. We had a multi-million-dollar capital campaign to build a second facility. I was overseeing and reporting directly to our board of directors millions of dollars, and I wrote grants, whether it be $500,000, $250K, $300K, and so forth and so forth, trying to raise funds for this new building. And that building is in existence to this day. Research grants, they pay for important research projects, new discoveries, whether it be scientific, whether it's tech, Whether it's just doing a humanities project, there's money, or even an art project, there's funding for that. Endowments, these are the types of grants that are used as investment tools. And a lot of times you'll find that these will be used by colleges. For example, most colleges, not all, but most colleges are supported and they experience longevity because a rich funder, probably an alum of theirs, has invested into their endowment, so that they have this large sum of money that they draw interest from, and they use the interest to help fund the projects. It's pretty well known in higher academia that most PhD programs don't make enough money to pay for those said programs. So a lot of colleges use this. Now, for larger schools, your 5A schools and so forth, they're going to have a lot more revenue generated as it relates to tuition payments and things like that. But still, even with that, and I know from firsthand experience for writing for colleges, you're going to find that most of them are going to still have endowments. One very popular known endowment, and it works the same way, is the Lilly Endowment. That's a big deal as well. They give out, they're very selective, very highly selective, but they give out grants as well. Challenge grants, these are conditional money. If you raise this amount, then I will give. It is a dollar for dollar match oftentimes, but it doesn't have to be. But these are challenge grants. If we're challenging you to raise this amount of money on your own, and then we'll come in and we'll match that. They can also use other conditions as well to challenge. But again, as long as there is a challenge component to it, you're going to receive, that's going to be another grant as well. Here we are, business grants. There are many of them that are out there to start a business. And I want to be clear when I say this, I am not talking about the SBA. I'm not talking about loans. There's free money that's out there where you can find to actually start a business. There are investors who are looking for tax breaks and they're willing to give that funding to you. There are foundations who want to support economic equality so that they may give a grant out or several smaller grants out to start a business for historically underrepresented founders. There's so many different types that are out there, but there are business grants that are on the market. Historically, what I would say is what I've seen over the years is that when it comes down to business grants, historically about 25% of the grants, if I were to quantify it, have been allocated for for-profit businesses with 75% for nonprofits. That has started to change again with some of the more recent political and social events. But that money is out there and so much of it goes unclaimed. So I really encourage everyone that's on this call, if you are interested in starting a business or you know that you need capital funding, you don't always have to go to get a loan. There are other options for you as well. Capacity building grants. This pays for organizational development to build your capacity, i.e. training, coaching, professional development, and brand expansion. A lot of times this can be incubator grants. Okay, but that again, the goal is to fund you so that we can help you build your capacity. And again, both for-profits and nonprofits alike are eligible. Sponsorships, oftentimes done through corporations, but it can be done through individuals, families as well. These are donations from businesses to support special causes or special events. And there's a whole approach. There's an art to getting these, but they can be done. I actually worked with a nonprofit and I was on Channel 6 News here in Tulsa. The nonprofit was called Rock Your Party, and we did an event called Rock Your Prom. I was really fortunate. I was able to help them secure upwards over $30,000 worth of corporate sponsorship as a new nonprofit. They only had been in existence for about 2 years. And so unfortunately, we couldn't host the event because the pandemic ruined that. However, I'm saying that and sharing that with you to let you know those sponsorships are out there. If we've gotten them, you guys can get them as well. And here's my little favorite I want to share with folks, because these are low-hanging fruit, if you will. Mini grants. This is one of my favorites. These are grants that are given in small amounts. They're easy to get. They usually target non-professional grant writers. They're not expecting you to know the ins and outs in every nook and cranny of the advanced level of grant writing, but these are very easy to get. Disney has had a long-standing tradition and history of giving out mini grants. They're oftentimes $500 here, maybe $250 there. In some cases, they may be $1,000. It could be for a community project, it could be for an individual, and so forth and so on. But here's the thing. Don't sleep on $500 here, $500 there, because if you apply for enough of them, those dollars add up, and they add up pretty fast. Again, this is a very easy way to get your foot in the door, get you some grant writing experience under your belt, and raising a $500, $1,000. That's pretty easy to do. It's not that difficult. You just have to be intentional and put forth a little bit of effort to get it done. So I definitely encourage you for mini grants. Here are some examples. This is an old grant. This is not live now. I probably could find some more updated ones, but this is something that I found for an old class that I taught, and I wanted to share it with you. This was when the census was going on here in 2020, the Tulsa Regional had this going on for mini grants. And so sometimes, I know that we have some ministers and folks of the faith that are on this call. Sometimes there's this misnomer out there that says, well, because there's a quote separation between church and state, that churches or faith-based organizations cannot get grants, or because of that. That couldn't be further from the truth. Just to break it down Sesame Street style, the whole idea between the separation of church and state for those that are faith-based is that the idea is that you can use funding. The government will give you funding to support your initiatives as long as you're not using those funds to advance your religion. In other words, they're not going to give you money to proselytize. But what they will do, let's just say, I'm going to give you an example. Let's just say if you have an after-school program at your church and you're using biblical principles to talk about stewardship, and you're teaching a math class, there are so many grants that are out there that you can get for your church or your ministry to teach math, to do community and development and social good and those sorts of different things. Even though you're a church, even though you're faith-based, the idea is that you just can't use the money to try to host an altar call to try to get people to accept, Christ as their savior. That's the thing. You have to be specific about that. But there actually has been a White House Office of Faith-Based Grants. Maybe you didn't know that or not. And that would be something I would encourage you to research. There are several faith-based grants that are out there. Recently, I came across one that was pretty large for historic Black churches being able to become landmarks. I know that some of my colleagues have experience writing for some of these types of grants. There's a lot of funding to support missionary work and event and all sorts of different things from a social sector, depending on where it is. There's more than one way to get it, but that funding is out there. I gave these examples with this particular grant a couple of years ago. As a local house of faith, you could use this grant to purchase an iPad, put it in the foyer, and then as people came in and out of the church, they could fill out the census. You could put it in if you were an apartment complex manager. Again, these are non-traditional roles. None of these are nonprofits per se, but you could use these funds to cater food for 2 events where residents could come and sign up and complete the census at your apartment complex, in your clubhouse, and that's free money to support your initiatives. You could literally be a group of teachers, and you could use these funds to purchase project materials for your students and to help teach them about census data, and then you could do research and other resource compilation and so forth. And again, this is all free money that does not have to be paid back. This is one example of several hundreds, even thousands of grants that are out there on the market that are very easy to get. These are mini grants. Essentially, folks, if you can think it, it can be grant funded. That is the quote from me, but it's really true. If you can think it, it can be grant funded. The sky's the limit. Yes, there are parameters. There are certain things that certain grants ask for that you have to operate within. But if you can think it, it can be funded. So let your imagination run wild. Come up with out the box innovative ideas. And yes, you can receive grant funding for those things. It's all about knowing how to properly package it. And you can make that happen for yourself, your cause, your company. Now, I was asked a question before, where do we go to find grants? Where can we get some of this information? Here are some basic entry level resources. Google is going to be one of your best. That's your favorite cousin. It's going to be your easiest way. It's free. You're going to search for grants, again, using key terms to find what you need. I use Google all the time when I'm doing grant searches. You don't have to spend any money for it, but you would be amazed at what you can uncover if you do the right types of search queries. Grants.gov. This is what you call the catalog of federal domestic assistance. This is all things federal grants. If you ever wanted to know how in the world did an organization, a nonprofit, or some other entity win a federal grant, this is where all of the grant announcements for the federal government are coming out of. I must warn you, there are hundreds, thousands of them. They give them out, they can come out night and day and night. There's so many of them, it's so hard to keep up with. But here's the thing, federal grants are the gold standard when it comes down to grants, the grant industry, but they're also some of the most competitive grants to get as well, but they're also the most lucrative. This is where you're really asking for big money. The lowest in most cases that you would be able to ask for at the federal level, the floor is going to be $50,000. We're talking about $100,000, $2, $3, $4, $500,000, or even multi-million-dollar grants. They are out there, believe it or not. And you can actually qualify for some of these, even as a for-profit business. Candid.org. This is formerly the Foundation Center. GuideStar and GrantSpace are related as well. This is a private grants clearinghouse. This is a wonderful place to get information. Grantwatch.com, another one. Here's one of my favorites that I use. This is for folks who want to dig their heels in a little bit deeper and get a little bit more advanced. Instrumental. This is literally grant research on steroids, where I've used a lot of these others that are free or very low cost. Sometimes they're not always as user-friendly when it comes down to uncovering the information and data. Sometimes you have to go and pour over, let's just say, for example, foundations. You'll find that you have to go through who are some of the who's in the leadership positions, and there's just a lot of extra work that you would have to do. Instrumental essentially does all of that for you. It is a paid subscription. It's not cheap. It does cost, but it is a worthwhile investment if your organization, or even if you as an individual would want to go that route. And then social media, you would be amazed at how many grants are posted on social media. Sometimes there may be small grants of $500, $1,000 here and there, but that money goes a long, long way. And you can find that on social media, Instagram. I actually, for example, Transformation Church, they had a giveaway about a year or so ago for businesses and certain groups. And it was posted, I believe, for the most part, on social media, Instagram. And I was able to find out more information about that. And I actually spoke with some of the folks who actually applied and won. So you would be amazed to find that grants are everywhere. They're in some of the most unlikely, unexpected places. News and print, online media publications, as well as press releases. If you guys want to learn some more, I'm going to take some questions here, but if you want to connect with me, this is my LinkedIn. I'm going to also put this in the chat as well. Send me a connect request. We can talk. And then if you want to book an appointment with me, this is my Calendly link, www.calendly.com/freelance-sole-professional. You can book directly with me. Keep in mind, I do fill up pretty fast and I only have a certain number of slots, but I am open to giving out free 20-minute intro consultations for prospective clients. All right, this is going to be round 2 of asking my questions. I'm going to stop my screen share. And I am all ears. You guys fire away at whatever grant-related questions you have.
We have a question from the VFA team. Rafa, you want to ask?
How long does it typically take to hear back from grants?
The average turnaround time, you can look at least 2, depending on the grant, it can be from 2 months on the low end up to 6 months on the high end. It just really depends on the funder.
If you're new to grant writing, would you recommend starting out with private funding or public funding, or does it make a difference?
Private funding. It does make a difference. If you are brand new to grant writing, if you tried to write a federal grant, it would scare you half to death. So I am recommending that you start off with private funding. It's easier in general to get. Federal grants that is not something you typically want to tackle alone. I would really encourage you to get a professional or take a class where you are really learning how to do that. There is truly an art to writing federal grants. The average federal grant, Monica, takes on the low end 125 hours to compile from scratch. High end is 200 hours. That's a lot of legwork that you have to do. And it could sometimes take as much as 2 months to compile all of that data. But the payout is going to be much greater. But again, I encourage you starting off with private funding first. Next question. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We've got another question from the VFA team.
I got a question about micro grants. So you said they're the easiest to get, but like, for lack of a better term, can I really just bullshit a micro grant like that, or do I have to like actually have a legitimate reason to get said micro grant? And what I mean by a legitimate reason, like, a lot of my friends make music per se. Could they finesse a micro grant to buy mics and stuff like that, or do you need like an actual? I don't know if that's making sense, but
yes, let me give you an example. Okay, let's just say that Disney was giving out micro grants, all right? And let's just say they were $500 each. They were giving them out for community service projects for, let's just say World AIDS Day, okay? So building awareness surrounding the disease, training and teaching and so forth. And you say, let's say your friends wanted to apply for that grant. Well, you guys are musicians or your friend is a rapper or whatever, but you need new microphones for your what you guys are doing. How could you marry, if you will, your musical art form to this grant program? What you could literally do is apply for the mini grant and say, we are going to do a community concert where we're going to write socially conscious rap. We're going to perform socially conscious rap and hip hop. And we're going to do it at set location, this stage. We're going to invite people, the youth and others to come in. The community is going to be a wonderful community event. But what we're needing is we need new microphones, because right now our current microphones are trash and nobody's going to hear anything that we're going to rap or say about it. And we can't talk about the AIDS. We can't talk about awareness. We can't talk about anything without these microphones. As long as you have a solid budget and you can explain that, you just got a $500 grant, a check to go and buy $500 worth of microphones. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
it did. Thank you very much. 5 years of current
You're
grant.
welcome.
5
It's
seconds.
all about how you spin it. That is what you can't is, and I didn't get into this because I do teach this in another class, but I know, of course, we don't have enough time. You cannot just, this is one of the biggest mistakes that people tend to make when they start writing grants. They start off with, I have this wonderful idea. So I am going to now, I want to get funding for what I need. This is how I see the problem exists. I'm going to write grants from my own perspective. You need to align whatever your perspective is with the funder's perspective, because at the end of the day, they're looking at this as an investment that I am making financially to see some good, some social good go forth in the community and so forth. So you need to do your homework and make sure that whatever idea that you have aligns with the funder. If you're a faith-based organization, it's not very wise to think that you're going to write a grant for an agnostic or a secular organization and think that you're going to get funding for your ministry. That's ludicrous. It's not gonna, and I'm not talking about the rapper either. No, that's not gonna happen. They're not gonna give you money. They have a whole different worldview than what you have. Just like if you are a person who is pretty much agnostic, okay, you're gonna go to a church asking for them to fund an agnostic-centered. I think it almost goes without saying. So it sounds crazy. But people do this all the time. They'll write one grant and then they'll shoot it out to like 50 different prospects or prospective funders. Say, I think the more the merrier. I'm just gonna shoot it out to everybody that I can. No, let me tell you something. If y'all don't get anything else from this workshop, leave with this. You can either take the Top Gun approach, for those of us who are old enough to remember that movie, or the James Bond approach. That means that Top Gun, that he would have the Uzi shooting out 1,000,000 bullets like that. Imagine if those are all grant applications. If you're trying to hit, you're shooting out 50 bullets trying to hit one target. But James Bond is smooth and sophisticated, and he'll get on the roof and he'll put his scope on and he'll look at that target, make sure it's in perfect in alignment, and then he'll shoot one bullet with his silencer on and hit a bullseye. You need to be able to do the James Bond approach. It's better for you to get 5 highly strong, highly compatible funders who align with your perspective and your initiative, versus trying to send out 50 different applications without doing the research, because you're not going to get funded. That's one of the easiest ways to not win as it relates to grant writing. I hope you guys took that one to heart, because that is a game changer. Next question.
I have a question.
I had a question.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there sort of, and that was really great information that you shared just now. Is there a particular like template or format that companies need to have in place and to provide grantors with certain information, like the company, the services that they provide, their budget? Like, is there a particular template that we need to sort of have in place so that we can easily submit that to different grant writers? And then, different grantors. And then do most grantors, even like for the small loans, expect you to give them a follow-up after they give you your money, after they give you their money? Do they expect you to give them an update as to how that money was used? Is that typically expected of all grantors?
Okay, I'm going to answer the latter question first, and then I'll go back to the first question.
Okay.
Yes, they're going to, especially if they're giving you a sizable amount of money, Valerie, most grantors are going to want to see the impact. They want you to measure they want to see what you're doing with the money. They want you to, especially at the federal level, you're going to have quarterly reports, more than likely, annual, semi-annual reports. It can be very robust and daunting. But in general, they're going to want to see where that money is going, because unfortunately, in the nonprofit world specifically, there has been a lot of when it comes down to misappropriation of funds. Sure. And I hate to say it, that can be in the faith-based or non-faith-based arenas. I've seen both. However, that they're going to want to use that as a system of checks and balances. And as it relates to
is that even for the smaller grants, 500,000, those
$500 ones, there may be some of that, but it's not going to be anything near what the federal government would ask. I'll give you an example, like for the $500 grant, if you won that, maybe the funder will want to reach out to you and say, hey, can you send us a picture of your event or something like that? They just want to see that it happened, that sort of thing. It's not going to be as strict at that level. Okay. But when you start asking for bigger money, yes, it will. Also, answering your first question, there are some free templates that you can use online. However, I will say this, in most cases, grantors are going to give you a rubric of something that they want. They will, if you're asking for a sizable amount of money, they're going to ask you, these are the things that we need to know. And if they give it to you in chronological order, you give them answers back in chronological order. You do not veer off from what if they are giving it to you in A, B, C, D, E, your answers on your grant need to be in order, A, B, C, D, E, and you need to make sure that you back up what you're saying.
Thank you.
I know that we're at the end of our program time. I am still willing to stay for a few more minutes and take more questions because I know that we see them rolling in. So Mandy, are you guys okay for staying just for a few extra minutes to take a couple of more questions?
Yeah, I think we could do a couple minutes.
Okay, all right. I'm all ears. Next questions.
I'm going to ask questions in the chat.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Well, I was one of them, Precious. It looks like there are some questions that are in chat. I'm not sure if you're answering those questions that are coming in through chat, but they seem like good areas to touch on.
Okay, Precious, I'm looking at the chat now. Did you have a specific question as well?
No, I don't. I'm just watching y'all ask these questions and I'm learning. That's what I'm doing at the moment.
Okay, I see one question here from Raquel. It says, could you talk about how one could use this data in different ways on a grant from a for-profit versus a nonprofit? And then, or would the approach be the same from both types of organizations? No. The approach is going to be completely different. So Raquel, one example would be, and it's going to be based off of the funder. If you are looking for a corporate sponsorship, and I teach an entire class on this, what they're giving from is called corporate social responsibility, CSR. What you need to know about seeking money from corporations versus foundations is that corporations want to see a bottom dollar. What they're wanting to do is you have to take whatever your mission of your nonprofit is and align it with their business initiatives. You need to see what things that they're going to be more so interested in are going to be, how can you, if we sponsor your nonprofit's event, how is this going to translate into more sales for us? So you have to be able to show them and document how you can be an advertising voice for them and help them to raise their sales, create more awareness about their brand, even penetrate in new markets while still serving the community. So for example, and that's going to be, let's just say hypothetically, let's say if you were raising money for a school, okay, and you were seeking corporate sponsors, well, all right, it is going to be creative, but let's just say if you wanted to go to Bama Pies here in Tulsa, they give away money all the time. Okay, one of the things that you're going to do with Bama Pies is, as you do your research, is, well, who's going to eat Bama Pies? Who's a part of their target market? Just their customers. You're going to want to know that kind of data before you even enter into having a conversation with them, because that's where they're speaking from. They're coming from a totally different state of mind. So Bama Pies, they're going to be, I mean, I know that they're in some schools already. They have like B2B contracts and that sort of thing. But if you are able to find a way to take whatever your event is, get more parental involvement, and let people see that Bama Pies was a sponsor, they will in turn go and buy some of those pies. You can do the same thing with Little Debbie and the snacks, because moms especially are going to be the ones that are going to go to the grocery stores. If you can get if a woman's event, women that have children, that is a great advertising tool for them. They would be more inclined to sponsor an event that, brings that target audience to them, because it's going to increase their brand as well. How you would do it for nonprofits, those foundations are going to be driven more so by social impact. So having your numbers in place, showing where this particular community issue was before you got involved? Where is it now that you have gotten involved? Those are going to be your selling points for that. That's how that works. Next question.
It looks like LaCarrie Williams had her hand up. Do you want to jump on with your question?
Sure. Hey, Spesh.
Hey.
I put a couple questions in the comments. I don't think they got through, but one in particular I wanted to bring up that you might want to touch upon, whether it be nonprofits or if it's profit. I think a lot of grant writers, no matter the stages, don't realize a couple things they may need to address. So, for example, just to give an analogy, if you have a student applying for colleges, even if they don't have nothing but grants, they may not get loans. They have to apply for FAFSA, because if you don't apply for FAFSA, then you kind of are ineligible. So could you maybe talk really quickly, brush upon the need for a SAM ID for a lot of people who may not understand what that may be?
Yes, I can. Thank you. That's a really good question. I'm going to touch on the collegiate part, and then I'm going to segue into SAM. I know of about 3 individuals. And it just so happens two of them went to Howard University, and one of them went to another college in Michigan. And they're all Black females. Go women, Black women. I mean, but each one of these individuals got over $1 million in grants, scholarships to go to college. And so I know with one person, this is going to be another gold nugget. You might want to write this one down, especially parents that have children, because I'm going to make my kids do something like this. I know I actually sat down with one young lady who received a large sum of money through scholarships. And she said that what she did was she started in the 8th grade. And she did things in her community where, it wasn't normal things. It wasn't typical stuff and I'm not trying to downplay volunteer work or community service, but let me give an example. She started a radio show as an 8th grade middle school student in her community to discuss and address issues in her community. That's not normal, okay? Some of these kids have started businesses in high school, and they talk about their experiences of raising money and giving back. I actually used to tutor a young lady who worked on a political campaign for it was in the state of Washington out west, where a person was running for governor or lieutenant governor, I believe it was. And she has gotten a massive number of scholarships just off of doing those types of things. She also started a nonprofit and a business in the 10th grade, basically raising awareness for educational issues across the globe for females, and also promoting and championing female hygiene products. Because even though we may be blessed to have a lot of that here in America, in other nations, perhaps third world countries, there may be some challenges as it relates to having feminine hygiene products. She's done a lot of this type of work as a young person, and it has paid off. If your kids can do something bigger like that, the likelihood is when you begin to tell your story, or they write to these, they fill out the applications for these college scholarships, they're going to see this is something cut above the rest, if you will. They're going to stand out among the competition, and they will more than likely get funded to a greater degree than another kid who may have just volunteered for, their local soup kitchen or something like that. Not to downplay that, that's important. But again, it's all about how you position it and what you're doing. And yes, you do have to fill out the FAFSA, because some scholarships were given out just based off of their need-based. But when you can combine academic success along with that, you're almost a shoo-in to get them in many cases. As it relates to SAM ID, and this goes for both for-profits and nonprofits, because both groups can get in on this. And I haven't even mentioned this yet. Just like when you go to the IRS and you get your EIN, your employee identification number, SAM IDs are Uncle Sam's, if you will, his ID number for doing business with him, whether you're competing for grants or if you want to get into government contracting, which I have not mentioned, because that is a whole nother avenue or stream of revenue and income that you can produce for both your for-profit and your nonprofits, depending on how you position it. But that is going to be your ID number to do business with the government. So you have to have a SAM ID. You cannot write at the federal level. You cannot contract at the federal level without it. That is a great point, KK. Thank you for mentioning that. Do we have any room for a few more questions?
Where's that number obtained? The SAM ID.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Precious.
Precious, you can start off by going to www.grants.gov as it relates to the fundraising side of it. And there's a link on there where you can get more information about obtaining a SAM ID. If you follow up with me and if you have any troubles, I can also give you a direct link to get you that information as well. I have that. I just don't have it here in front of me.
Okay, so I want to definitely be respectful of everyone's time. Tim, thank you so much for leading this workshop and giving us so much great information and insight. We were so glad to have you. I encourage everyone to reach out if you have additional questions. I know that there was such a great conversation going. So if you have additional questions, please reach out. We're so glad that you were here. Thanks, Tim, for dropping your LinkedIn in the chat. Thanks again. Thanks again for everyone for joining us this evening. Stay tuned, check your email for the follow-up survey for the Amazon gift card, and we'll be in touch soon.